Namaskar viewers and welcome to this exciting show on Sattology, debunking mythology. And we are all anticipating Bhagwan Ram's temple inauguration in Ayodhya. It's a very auspicious occasion for us and we want to celebrate it. So today at Sattology, our focus is debunking mythology. All Ramayan, Mahabharata are Sattology. So please join this movement. It's not just a YouTube channel. Please join this movement. And also people who are watching it live, for your information, New York, Times Square, many of the great, our Hindu Sanatani leaders from USA have arranged a Times Square live show coming from Republic Bharat. So with that in mind, today we are talking with a very famous author, the historic Rama. He has written the book called The Historic Rama, and a very good friend of mine. And we would like to hear from him about Ikshwaku Vamsh. So actually for those, before I bring him on, in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna mentions Imam Vivasate Yogam. He first told this science, Manave Ikshwaku Praha. So Ikshwaku was Vansh. Manu told it to Ikshwaku, the same science. So let us bring him on without delay. Welcome Nilesh Oak ji.
Namaskar. Namaskar Aditya ji. Glad to be here.
Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Yes.
It's like Shiv ji is also included.
Yes.
And Oak gives you very historical name, historical personality, because you had Pian Oak.
Yes. Yes. Also it means very solid, like a roble, for our viewers in South America. Roble, the solid wood. And my first name goes both ways. Nila Isha, blue god, can go for many gods, right from Shiva to Krishna to Rama.
Yes. And Vishnu.
And Vishnu, of course, yes.
Ghanshyam.
Yeah.
So Nilesh ji, can you briefly explain about Lord Ram's Purvaj, Ikshwaku, and Maharaj Ikshwaku and Ikshwaku Vansh, so that we know the lineage where Bhagwan Ram came?
Okay. Yes. So Bhagwan Ram is known everyone knows that he's from Ikshwaku Vamsha. And Ikshwaku Vamsha is considered so important that you will find many of some of the branches of Sanatan Vedic Dharma, like say if you look at the Buddhism or even Jainism, they will also identify their, the key individuals of their sampradaya, so Buddhism, so Shakya Muni Buddha, there is identification of his Vamsha with the Ikshwaku Vamsha. Same thing happens for Mahavir ji, for Jainism. And if you go back to their genealogies that they gave for, say, various Tirthankara, for example, like Rishabhadev, and if you go backward, so they will consider both Krishna Bhagwan also, but also like Ikshwaku, many people from Ikshwaku lineage as the members of their sampradaya, which makes sense because they are pulling some of the specific Niti Dharma principles from these great personalities. So if we want to go before Rama, I think Bhagwan Ram, that's what you asked the question.
Yes.
So let me just quickly mention, the Historic Ram is my book. I wrote 3 books, 2 on the Mahabharata, 1 on Ramayan, but we'll stick to Ramayan. In India, those people who might be watching in India, the book is available from somebody else, like Subbu Publications. Of course, they can buy from Amazon, but then it costs a lot. It has to get shipped from here. But the title we had to change. We called it 12,209 BC. It's easy, and I'll start with that because that is the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha, 12,209 BC, approximately more than 14,000 years ago. Now let me go back to Ikshwaku. So if we want to go to the time of Ikshwaku, we have to go back more than 14,000 years ago. And we will not go into the exact number because we don't know that number. But we know that there are up to 40 plus different kings, specific kings of Ikshwaku dynasty that are mentioned between, say, Ikshwaku and Bhagwan Ram. Okay, and these 40 are not the linear genealogy because they are only prominent kings of Ikshwaku dynasty are mentioned. So not all the kings are mentioned. So again, we don't know how far back. But something interesting that Aditya ji, you may already know, but for benefit of our viewers, So right now, when we think of Ayodhya, where the mandir is going to be built and it will begin in just few days, that is in the eastern UP of our current geography, the way we look at it. But what you will find, if you go to the Rigveda references, if you go to even the Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana references, that we know that the area of Ikshvaku was to the west of Ayodhya. So original place, and then Ikshvaku must have established Ayodhya. But they lived in the area of a Saraswati. So, for example, that's why when Bharat is traveling from
KK.
Ayodhya to Kekaya and then coming back, and in the descriptions there it is saying, this is, somebody else mentioned that this is the land of his great ancestors as he is crossing the Saraswati area.
Yes.
And especially when he's crossing a river, we don't know now which river was that, but when he's crossing the river Ikshumati, and we know that it was somewhere in the area of a Sattology and Saraswati. So it was way to the east. So that is something else we know. Now, quickly, if you see from Brahma, Bhagwan Brahma, and then we say the Manu, and then Manu had 20 sons or many, but we know prominent names 20 in Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And one of them was Ikshvaku, right? And if you try to think of a time, we can only guess, I'm saying, okay? We cannot talk of an exact timing. Based on my limited research, because I have not done much beyond 24,000 BC as of now, it takes us back to possibly 40,000, 45,000 to 55,000 BCE, and that is just I would say, a crude estimate for the timing of Ikshvaku or many of the key royalties from the Ikshvaku dynasty.
No, great beginning to the discussion here. So, in the Ikshvaku Vansha, when we say Ikshvaku Vansha, many people, they all know. People who know, they know. So, but for many people, even in South America, and since today we have people from South America there, I have no idea how they are connected to Ramayana more than Mahabharata. If you notice that they have like Hanuman. If you go to Machu Picchu, you'll see a lot of references in there, Ecuador, and many of the states on the east coast of South America. They strongly identify themselves with Ramayana, and many of them are going for the Ram. Many of them are going flying all the way 24-hour flight to India for this Ram event. So, what is that connection? How does it connect to them?
Okay, well, no, great question. The connection comes from multiple different ways. Okay, for example, the connection of a Ramayana or of a India to say South America. Let's take South America as a whole, and then I'll split it for specific instances. But the East Coast you mentioned, right? People going 24-hour flight and going to India and whatnot. But the West Coast also. So, for example, we have viewers from Chile. I mean, you mentioned that, and so there is a connection of Ramayana to Chile. Now it comes in a different way. It comes from a Rama side. It comes from the Vanara side, meaning, the great kings of Kishkinda, Sugriva and Hanuman and that side. It also comes from a great Ravana side. For example, Ravana had conquered the east from Lanka all the way to the south. He has conquered the east. He had also conquered the west. And going eastward is where he had gone to all the way to South America. There are enough references that allude to that. Of course, it won't say South America. It doesn't say Antarctica. But if you follow the descriptions, what descriptions are given, which direction he's going, and what did he do there. For example, it could be even all as far as up as Colombia. So for example, he went to fight with someone known as Nivanta Kavach, and he did not succeed. So he made a treaty with them, and then it was a very smart move, statecraft, and then he took their help to do this. So that's just from a Ravana connection. Now, if you want to look from an archaeology perspective and astronomy perspective, quickly I'll give you this. From archaeology perspective, when Vanaras are searching for Sita in the 4 different directions, okay, Sugriv tells them what to look for in each direction, north, south, east, west. So we will just take the east direction. So with current India as a reference, he's saying, okay, what different landmarks you should look for as you go to the east direction. So he talks about the Ropya Dweep, which is modern day Thailand. He talks about the Yawadweep, which is a Java, modern day Indonesia. And then he talks about they continue to go further, then a Shirasagar, like ocean, Pacific Ocean. And after that, he gives a very wonderful description, actually 2-3 different descriptions. I'll quickly take two because they are very easy to verify. One on the west coast of Peru, like Pisco, near the Bay of Pisco, Paracas. There is, right now you can see the trident that is engraved into a phosphate rock, like a red shining rocks, okay? And it is known as a candelabra of Andes. When the Spaniards found it, they gave the name candelabra of Andes, like a candle stand, okay? Nobody knows who engraved it. Nobody knows when it was engraved. If you look in the Ramayan description, it is saying go all the way east, and then finally you will find this trident, okay? It says, three structure, three shira, three branches, Trishira, Kanchanas, Ketu, Talak, Ketu, Mahatmana, okay? And it says it is a great indication that has been done. And why, not only it stops there, it says Vedika, meaning it has a bhumi, the land that is engraved as a Veda bhumi, like as a yajna, like a rectangle, which you can see today. But it goes further and it tells you who created it, why it was created, and when it was created. Now, Ramayana time we consider as a Treta Yuga. It says it was created in the Kruta Yuga. It was created by Mahadasheshware. I mean, you can take that as a Vishnu, Indra, whatever you want to take that as a name. And it was done to mark the border of a east direction. Now, quickly, I'll give you a second. I'll give it back to you after that, which is this. Now, you would say that could be a coincidence. Well, of course, anything can be a coincidence. But when there are series of coincidences that match to something, then you know that this is not just a coincidence. There are genetic studies from Harvard. This is, I think, 2007 paper, David Reich and few others, where they have very clearly, it's a very weak signal because it's going back to more than 14,000 years ago. But it is a weak signal, but it's still a significant, statistically significant signal of genetic transmission from India going through Indonesia, Thailand, all the way to South America. And now here to your point that you mentioned, they going all the way not only to the western part of South America, but all the way going to the eastern part of South America. And again, if you look at some of the locations in Chile, there is a evidence of human habitation going back to long before Ramayana, like going back to 33,000 BC. And there is a lot more in Amazon that is not been explored yet. And when it gets explored, we have to just imagine what we will find in terms of the antiquity. So there is a perfect connection. And quickly, the last one, from an astronomy perspective also, what is beautiful, or astronomy or geography. Do you know what Sugriv says? Sugriv says there is a one straight route from Indonesia through Polynesian islands all the way to Chile and Peru. But he also says there is a second route that you can take from the north. And if you go back again 14,000 years ago, something very amazing and phenomenal is that you can find, if you go back 14,000 years ago, the sea levels were such, and so that the land was connected with a land bridge between Asia and North America through Alaska. So he refers to, very indirectly, he refers to the journey of a sun also, he says, but that is going through the north. He says you can also come from the north and you can go straight to the ocean. So there is a connection.
No, very important point. I think the Alaska, the Russia and US, I think just you said 14,000 years back, even today is traversable by boat. The islands can be easily hopped on by the boat.
True.
Very easy. Like it's just a 35-mile thing connection. 35 mile is nothing in oceanography. And so it's a very much believable fact that yes, the world was connected. And I think I can testify, a testimony I can give you, when Yudhishthir was talking with Krishna in Mahabharata about Jarasandh. Then Krishna says that because of Jarasandh, the Ucha Koti Kshatriya went east and the Nimna Koti Kshatriya went west.
Very nice.
It's Parshuram's, because of your Parshuram. And they crossed, and there's not much is not mentioned there, but they must have crossed this because they were so scared. They wanted to run as far away as possible. and large numbers, not in
Mm-hmm.
small numbers. Now, coming back to the
Hmm.
Ikshwaku ones, because
Hmm.
everyone is very excited about Bhagwan Ram's temple.
Yeah.
So, the Ram temple has taken over the world. It's not just India. People are in
Hmm.
Argentina, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, USA. USA obviously has more South Asian Hindus, but in places where people don't know anything, or maybe the Indian Hindus don't know anything about the spread of Ram, but the excitement in South America is more than even North America. So how do you explain
Yeah.
that?
Well, I don't know how I can explain the excitement in South America more than North America. But the first point that you mentioned is very relevant, that the whole idea, the whole Rama as a civilizational icon, if we can call it, it's not a civilizational icon for India alone. Okay. It is a civilizational icon for the entire world. And here are some of the reasons. For example, if we want to go and look for any literary document that is been preserved across the world, there are other evidences that are preserved, which is great. Like Turkey, you can go, Gobekli Tepe, or if you go to Indonesia, Gun Padang, you can go back to 22,000 BC. Or if you go to Japan, you find the Hamon culture, going back to 12,000 BC, and its connection, by the way, with Ecuador. Ecuador and Japan, they were connected, civilizationally connected 12,000 years ago, 12,000 BC or 12,000 years ago. So we see these connections. But as far as a literary document that can shed light for us in terms of civilizational culture, science, astronomy, technology, medicine, I mean, all these wonderful areas, the only document, at least that we are aware right now, around the world is Ramayana. Of course, there is a Rigveda, but I'm not going into Rigveda for a while because Rigveda gets a bit cryptic. The details are not always given in a full detail. But in case of Ramayana, it's a perfect, great biography that is given to us with many nuances of the culture going back to that much time. That is the oldest text that we have. So that's number one. Now, let us go to the east. That is very easy to cover from India. So if you go to Thailand, their king to this day goes by the name Rama.
Rama.
Rama 1, Rama 2, Rama 3, Rama 9, Rama 10, and so on,
True.
right? Not many people may know. Actually, I'm part of the team which is working on the Global Encyclopedia of Ramayana, which is a 5-year-long project, right? Working with the uh, Indian government, Ministry, External Affairs Ministry, but also the UP government, so something like this. And so we are working on it. Now, this was not known to me. For example, in Philippines, at a certain grade level, Ramayana is taught in the curriculum. And they have their own version of Ramayana, of course, that is just like that has happened in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, and Laos, and so on. So that connection is well known. So is with the Vietnam, that connection, Cambodia, that's a well known. But to the west, if you come, like up to Egypt, and then you can go up to Ireland also, if we have a time, we'll go. But if you come to Iran, Iraq, Iran, why name Iran? That's a Arya.
Arya.
That's Arya, right? But then you go further. If you come to now, what is modern day Turkey? And if you go back to like 4000 BC, the archaeological evidence and whatnot, and for Egypt, you go back even further back, what you find is that they consider themselves that they belong to solar dynasty, which is the same as Rama's dynasty, Surya Vamsha versus the other Chandra Vamsha. Some of the names, like if you go back to 2000 BC, approximately 1600 to 2000 BC, this is a treaty between Mitannis and Hittite, okay, in the area which is now modern day Syria, Turkey, somewhere in that area. And when they did the treaty between the two factions, let's say, they had a war and they had a treaty. In the treaty, they are invoking the deities from Rigveda, like Nasadia and whatnot. And if you look at the names of the kings on both sides, you will find a direct connection with the Ramayana names. Like, so their names are like a Dasharatha has become like a modified, just like Ram, Lakshman becomes Lakhan, right in India, right in the UP, you can see that. Similarly, the names have slightly changed, but you just like in Indonesia and Thailand also you see that, and in Philippines. But yes, they are basically, there is an effect of Ramayana or Rama characters and Rama civilization all the way to Turkey, Egypt on the west side, all the way to Philippines, and now we talked about the Chile and the whole South America. So it is a good question that you ask, why there is a more excitement in South America. It's actually a good question to ask them. They may have some great insights that can actually help us understand these connections more.
Great answer. And I think I would like to now probe you on the Ireland connection, because you just
Hmm.
mentioned Ireland and I stuck my mind. So, what is that connection?
Okay, the Ireland connection. I mean, this it's very very interesting connections. And after this, those of our listeners, I would encourage them to do this exercise. Okay, and for Aditya ji, you also, and I may send you some maps. Which is this? Now, the couple of connections. Number one, I'll go genetics, and then I'll come to geography and maps. Okay, the genetics, very recent paper. Now, when I say recent, it could be in last 10 years for all it matters. Okay, there is a paper on genetics, and the very clear title says the origin. I mean, if you look at the Irish people, many of my friends are from Ireland, and I used to go to Ireland on business. The Shannon on the west coast, but Dublin and whatnot. They are, you will see, very fair skin. Also have freckles. They are prone to freckles. That's because of a fair skin, of course. That becomes obvious. Now, the genetic paper that I'm referring to, I don't have it handy here. It refers to that the gene that is responsible for that particular fairness and freckles and whatever that particular skin color or skin texture, whatever you want to call it, is due to, of course, genetic mutation, and its origin is in India. So that is connection number one. Now, when exactly it happened? Remember, in genetics, genetic clock is an estimate, because you have to assume certain rate of mutation, you have to assume the number of times it happened, how frequently it happened. So there are a lot of assumptions that go into it. But therefore, the time can be vary from like a 5,000 years before to 15,000 years before. But it does come into this timeline of Ramayana. That's one. So that's a genetic connection of Ireland to India. Okay. Now, the second connection is of a geography, and this one is very fascinating. If you go and look at the old maps of Ireland, okay, you have to go really old, and just type on a Google and you will get those old maps of Ireland, and then expand them, try to find the good resolution. And you know what you'll find? Very interesting. The names of the places, sometimes names of the mountains, and sometimes actually a lot of names of the rivers of Ireland in those old maps have a direct Indian connection. What if I tell you there are the river names given that time? In fact, Dublin also has a connection, which is from a Danu, meaning drava, liquid. That's why dravya, and that's why you have not just Ireland, but even the rivers of Europe, blue Danube, and all those, okay, or Nile. But let's not even go there, like a Nile river. But the rivers of Ireland have names such as, now listen to this, Aditya ji, like a Ganga or Kaveri. And I'm not kidding, okay? So we have a clear evidence, or at least let's say circumstantial evidence based on this, of a migration of people from India who went to Ireland, and they took with them some of these names. And that time Ireland may not have been habitated before. The reason I'm saying that is because if the river names don't change that easily, okay, it takes a significant effort. For example, like when Europeans came to America, okay, they brought the places, just like I'm talking of Indian bringing places to Ireland. They brought their places. We have a Pittsburgh and we have a York, like a New York, and all these places are the European places are here, right? However, like Amherst, these are all European places, Boston and whatnot. But if you look at the rivers, we still have Ohio, we still have Mississippi. The river names get preserved as the old names, and they just stay that. So that is a connection to Ireland. Now, as to the exact timing, that is something not been figured out until now.
No, that's why I always wondered why Irish and Scottish are my best friends.
Well, yes.
So there is
But again, just like South America, they do you know that Brazil, I forgot the name of it, but there was some show in Brazil, TV serial, television serial, which was made by all Brazilian actors, producers, everyone Brazilian. But I was told, I have not watched it. I asked my couple of my Brazilian friends, and they told me the name I forgot, which is like, it's an Indian show, meaning the Brazilian actors, everyone are wearing saris there and Indian dhoti and all that. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I
There
saw
was
it.
a show. I mean, yeah.
No, I went to Rio last year to write my
Mm,
book, my second book, Narada. So I went purposely chose Rio because I
mm,
want to get that nature connection, and
mhm,
I was really shocked that the lot of affinity for Indian culture,
mm,
particularly Ramayana.
mhm,
Particularly Ramayana is a
mm,
that was one thing. There is also one connection of Amazon tribes. You mentioned Amazon in the first part. There's a particular ritual they follow for sun worship, which
mm.
is very similar to Chhat Puja in Bihar. Very similar.
Interesting.
The
Interesting.
prayers are meanings are exactly the same. Exactly the
Mm,
same. They
mm.
consider Surya as the eye of God in the sky, which is a Bhagavad Puran version.
Yes. Yes.
And
And a
and
Rigveda too,
and
Yeah.
Chandra also. Chandra
Yeah.
also they consider eye of Bhagwan in the sky.
Yeah.
And they call Bhagwan as Hareru, like something like
Mm,
that, which is
mm.
very close to Hari. But anyway, let's not go by just by the etymology here. There are a lot of things, but actually, the history of the world is actually connected and intrinsically connected to Bharat,
Mm.
because that was the only most well documented culture on the world. And
Yeah.
then when somebody talks about documentation,
Yeah.
what we have Ramayana, Mahabharata, and we have
Correct.
Itihas, Purana, so many things documented.
Yeah. And I would say 90% possibly was burnt by Muslims when they invaded India. But the point is, even then, whatever is being preserved is huge. It's so huge that it would honestly take multiple lifetimes for an individual to study them.
Well, Bhagwan Ram is coming to India, and people who burnt Ramayana have to face the music in future,
Right.
maybe sometime.
Right.
Now, my last question to you before we leave and sign off on this one. This is a question by the viewers. Why Indian government, when they're building the Ram Mandir, can they, why they are not propagating the message of Ram to the whole world proactively through their embassies?
Hmm.
You can choose not to answer. It's a political come
No, no, I
brand.
will answer. I will answer. So, see, again, I'm not a representative of the government, so I can't like say why. But I mean, I can be a critical of them, but I can also talk in their defense. For example, as a critical aspect, I will say they can do a lot more. Okay, I mean that's always can be said. It's a very generic statement, like not very intelligent statement to say. You can always, each one of us can do a lot more. So they can do a lot more. Okay, and in a methodical fashion, they can do it in their defense, what I will say, especially because of my involvement with the Global Encyclopedia of Ramayana, that I am in touch with many of the people in the ministries. Okay. And they are trying their best, but then remember the entire narrative due to colonialism, not just outside India, but inside India is so much, it has so much destroyed the basic framework. So you just open the mouth to convey the message, and it's not like this sold out academia or sold out these individuals I'm talking. Even the ordinary people who have been brainwashed through this what say 60, 70, whatever years of communist led, leftist led curriculum, like the text curriculum, the education curriculum, that they will say, oh, but I heard this, or I read something like this. So there is a long way to go. But again, in their defense, I will say, for example, on the encyclopedia of the Ramayana, like the external ministry, external foreign ministry is very much connected with it. The UP government, the Rama's place being the Ayodhya, they are connected with it. And so there are efforts. I mean, they can always do more, but it's not that they are not efforts. And then, lastly, quickly, I'll talk about the Babus. See, the Babus, they have passed those exams, IS exam, Indian administrative exam, by reading some stupid things like Rigveda was in 1500 BC and the Aryan came inside and all that nonsense, right? So they need to go through the brainwashing. I mean, the reverse brainwashing, de-illusionment needs to happen for them. to understand so that they can confidently start communicating. So it's a process. We have to do it at an accelerated pace, and that is partly the answer why we don't see the effectiveness of the government's message even when government is trying to do their best.
You know, one thing we have noticed, and I'm not a political commentator, at least on Sattology channel, but one thing we have noticed that everyone wants Ram Rajya, but
Hmm.
nobody wants Ram. So this is a very classical thing, you know. So Ram Rajya is not possible without Ram.
Yeah.
And purposely, like when we are talking to now it's a time to not be politically correct,
Hmm.
because it's Ram is our faith, and with
Yeah.
Ram we have strong faith in him. We believe, and we are fully convinced that he was our leader. Now, Indian embassy, and I'll particularly comment on the new education policy. I
Yeah.
did not see a single historian in that committee of the new
Yes.
education policy of India.
Right.
And like people like yourself and
Yeah.
other very leading
Yeah,
scholars.
Rajivji Malhotra, many people, just
And,
I mean, I have not read it yet, but that's what I heard. I mean, I was not called
the,
in any way,
and
but
then copying American system means
yeah,
Americans. I mean, you can easily say the current Indians outsmart the American kids.
yeah.
Now, copying an USA system to India, I think Bhagwan Ram studied in Gurukul, and that's where I'll stop there. He studied
Okay.
in Gurukul, and Gurukul-based education is more personal and
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Right. If I have a minute, I'll just use it. So I agree with you. I have to still read the new education policy. So quickly, I mean, there are good things everywhere in American education system. They should be taken, but not taken blindly. Now you talked about we have a faith. Now Joseph Campbell said, I don't need faith because I have experience. So that's also the case. So what I'm going to say is, people who may have even some doubts, doesn't matter where in the world, about the historicity of Rama. Okay, I will encourage them, if they can access Amazon, like this is book available around the world, The Historic Rama by my name Nilesh Oak. Okay, I would encourage them to read it. It's bit technical because it goes into 600 plus astronomy references from Ramayana, but they don't have to know astronomy to understand this. They don't have to have just a belief. They can actually read it and be convinced that the evidence presented here is better than any other historical claim around the world, and that remains my challenge. And if anyone doesn't agree, I'm open for a online, on camera, uncut debate with them
Now, I'll
for
be
the
your
time.
first buyer today, so I'm going to sign up today itself.
Okay.
And for viewers, please keep watching. And Nilesh said a very good point that its experience matters more over belief or faith. So Ram and Krishna you can experience. If the Ram's name can have so much strength, what about Ram himself? So
Yes.
let's talk about that sometime later. But thank you, Nilesh. As usual, interesting conversation. Lots
Thank
of
you, Aditya.
questions. Lots of questions. I cannot ask them. Most of them are not relevant to this show. I'm sorry, viewers. So let's talk about it next time. And I'm always available on our Sattology page on Facebook, or you can comment on YouTube videos. Most of those YouTube comments come to me directly. And thank you all. We have a very large Sattology team right now, almost 750 members who are actively working on Sattology causes in the USA. Thank you, all of you, for coming forward and supporting in such a big way. Do join our morning free sessions, everydaychen.com. And also, you can also connect with us, or you can write your own views of the local temples on sattology.org website. So wherever you are, wherever you see about Vedic culture, please write over there and share that information. You can create your own login on sattology.org, sattology.org. Create your own login, write a report of a local temple or about anything which you feel connected to historical Vedic culture. So thank you. Namaskar.